and welcome to another episode of the 905er podcast and the 905 Roundup. My name is Roland Tanner.
I am Joel McLeod.
And this week we've got a couple of stories, some developments in Hamilton in particular. Well, two issues that are front and center with the city right this week in one case, and another case with the upcoming election next year. Joel, why don't you take it away with the first of those stories?
Well, I guess we're talking about bad behavior by elected officials. A big news came down was the Integrity Commissioner came down kind of hard on Councillor Terry Whitehead today, basically saying that back September 11th, 2020, during a Public Works Committee meeting, reprimanding Councillor Whitehead's behavior when he went after a city staff member, basically questioning the staff member's integrity, his incompetence, and berating him and what have you. It was just atrocious behavior that was seen, and the Integrity Commissioner came out basically coming down with the recommendation that he be docked 30 days' pay and be prohibited from talking with other city staff members in a direct manner. It's pretty astounding recommendation. We don't know yet if the city council will go ahead with it, but there's a lot of in the committee paper that just it's kind of shocking that in the document they're saying that the conduct and the behaviors such unbecoming are not acceptable behaviors from a member of municipal council, such as peppering staff member A with interrogation-style questions, not listening, interrupting, and refusing to accept the responses, then suggesting that they are untruthful, lying, incompetent, or lack integrity. That's a pretty damning statement from the Integrity Commissioner to be filed against the sitting councillor. Quite shocking to have this come down on an elected official.
Yeah, and well, I mean, again, the commissioner didn't pull any punches. I mean, the commissioner says this is egregious conduct as it serves the dual purposes of undermining and impugning a staff member. Anybody who's watched even a limited amount of Hamilton Council meetings while Councillor Whitehead is in attendance will know that his behaviour is often inquisitorial, is the most generous way of putting it. This kind of cross-examination approach, but it's not cross-examination like a lawyer would do it. We're actually required to sort of abide by certain rules, and you can only make so many. You can't make unfair inferences. It's kind of this was an hour long cross-examination or longer. Not under kind of court rules where the defendant, if you like, it certainly wasn't a defendant in this case, has someone who can step in and say, okay, that's not a fair question. You can't ask that. So it's bullying, really. I mean, that seems to be very much the implication which comes out of this report. I should say that we were just trying to find the full report on the Hamilton website, and people have been tweeting out or sharing the link to the report in the last day or so. It's now seems to have disappeared completely from the Hamilton website. This is standard operating practice. I mean, it's almost impossible to find the report in the first place unless you know which council meeting to go through the minutes, to find the link, to find the document that there. And then when for one reason or another, that report now isn't available. So, as of this exact second, we're depending on secondhand accounts of the report via the press.
Well, what's interesting is part of the Integrity Commissioner's report, they were saying that when they interviewed other councillors and witnesses, they, quote, said those we interviewed described those episodes of hostile, harassing behavior as, quote, Terry being Terry. And then it goes on to say, when there is silence around the table, this likely speaks volumes to Councillor Whitehead. More than merely enabling this bad behavior, it condones and encourages it.
And there are councillors who don't put up with Councillor Whitehead, and there are councillors that do. It divides down that traditional line that divides that council between the kind of older councillors and the newer ones.
My argument, I'm going to maybe put words in the Integrity Commissioner's mouth here, is that, when you can't find these documents to hold your elected officials to account. Like it's like the culture is there. Well, let's not rock the boat. Like, let's all, we don't want to rock the boat, make waves or whatever have you. And that allows, again, it's that Canadian politeness. I'm not going to say that the council itself, it condones it necessarily. It gives the appearance of it for sure, but I won't say it actually condones it. But when you don't actually say, "Hey, I'm going to stand up and reprimand you," because I don't want to cause a fight. I don't want to cause disruption, and it'll make my life a little bit harder. It undermines the integrity of the office. I think it's one of these problems when you're told you have to police yourselves. There's not really an outside, or we have to wait every 4 years to make the change that's needed to hold these people to account. Yeah, go ahead.
And I mean, I saw this in Burlington before the last election. Maybe not quite as egregious as certainly not with regard to staff. With regard to members of the public, I've seen similar behaviour both in Hamilton and Burlington from other councillors. And I'm talking about prior to 2018 in Burlington's case. And it's certain councillors think that that's okay to bully and insult and cross-examine people who, and when we're talking about members of the public in particular, I mean, staff shouldn't be bullied any more than any other staff member by any other employer. Now, councillors aren't technically the employer in this relationship between councillors and staff. However, they're clearly superior in a position of authority. So the commissioner has said that there's repeated statements that Whitehead had threatened people with being fired. We know that he on Twitter several months ago threatened people who had. No, I'm trying to remember the details of the debate, but there was a tweet which was clearly threatening using the integrity, ironically, the integrity commissioner to kind of go after people who disagreed with council. Yeah, almost the most shocking thing is, people can get elected who are bad and behave badly. What's kind of most shocking is that the rest of council hasn't jumped on this like a ton of bricks and said, no, this kind of behavior is not acceptable in any kind of workplace. And a council chamber is ultimately a workplace.
Well, that's what it comes down to, is that the nature of any city council, the idea is you police yourselves. And the problem is that it turns into like a Lord of the Flies situation where you get councillors who aren't there to do the job. Now, like when you think about it, if you have a city staff coming before a committee to answer questions about public works, or I think in this question was the Aberdeen road diet. I apologize if I got that wrong, but it's something kind of mundane. It wasn't a great big, a huge city project. Something quite mundane that they wanted to. The idea is you come down and you ask questions. The idea is you ask city staff, I have questions about, how are we spending the money? Is this the best use? What were the results? What recommendations can we take away from this? That kind of generic questions that you want to clarify. I need more information before I can make a decision on this, is the idea behind this. Clearly what Councillor Whitehead wanted was some kind of, I call it like the West Wingism. Like you want that gotcha moment, right? Like, I cornered you into this quagmire of, I looped out in your own logic and look how smart I am. And you're right. It comes across as bullying, plain and simple. We were talking before we hit record. This mirrors another situation in the 905, that of the Halton Catholic District School Board. We actually had a very similar situation where they had a third-party auditor come in, look at their operations, and that auditor reprimanded the board trustees by basically saying, yeah, you're bullying staff. You're questioning their integrity, their competence, and their capabilities of doing their jobs for no reason, with no foundation. You're basically bullying them. And it's something to be said about this, these small-time counselors, small-time politicians who have their own little fiefdoms, right? It's like their own tiny little pocket of power, and they think they're sitting on Mount Everest. It's embarrassing. It's just sad and pathetic when it comes down to it. And what's sad is that, when the rest of that body doesn't stand up and say, no, we're going to hold you to account properly and right there in the time, it undermines the integrity of the entire body politic altogether.
Yeah, I mean, and the thing that brought me into municipal politics originally, the thing that got me interested and kind of following what actually happened, was this issue of kind of councils interact with the public. And the longer I've looked at it, the more I've come to the conclusion that it's not just the odd bad apple ruining the whole barrel. The whole barrel is rotten. The apples don't really matter because the water's pouring out of the holes. Mm-hmm. If I can torture that metaphor to absolute destruction, the municipal government is broken. The wrong people are getting elected. People who are completely unqualified, incapable of doing the job properly, who are holding back even moderate reform. Now, that's one thing. Okay, we have the electoral system we have, but the way everything works seems to come together to create these diabolical situations where councils are making bad decisions or not making decisions, or just, in Hamilton's case, repeatedly acting like a bunch of amateurs. And, let's hope a better election brings in better councillors. I don't think that's ultimately the fix. Because, we saw that in Burlington. We have different councillors, and I think most of them are better councillors than we had before. However, there are still huge problems in Burlington, which are just inherent to the system of how municipalities work. And it's not really the councillors' fault always.
Maybe it's not. But I mean, that's the thing is that, if you don't have, if the majority of councillors, or I'll go back to my school board trustee analogy or comparison as well, I should say, that, if the majority aren't willing to stand up and say, no, you've crossed a line, right? And maybe it's about giving the chairs more power. I don't know. I'm not an expert on municipal law and powers that be. But there's, that's the makeup. Maybe we're stuck in a situation where we have to wait every 4 years to vote the bums out, so to speak. But those 4 years, it's so tiresome and tedious to always have to go back into this quagmire. Because here's the thing, it's going to happen again. These reports aren't the wake up call, like, oh geez, I see the error of my ways. My apologies. It's almost like you're adding gasoline to the fire.
Well, I mean, according to Joey Coleman, who's tweeting pretty much as we're recording about the council meeting today, which we'll address probably next week, Councillor Whitehead's doing exactly the same thing today. I mean, he's not necessarily bullying a staff member, but he is behaving out with the established norms of council meetings. He is not following the procedure correctly. Chair of the meeting is just talking over him in an attempt to shut him up, rather than let him derail the meeting. So, nothing's changed. This is what goes on every meeting where Councillor Whitehead is present. He hasn't been present for several months because of illness. He's just returned. And he's not alone, let's remember. I mean, we were talking about Councillor Marula the other few months ago, and the incident with the gym. And there are several councillors who have not covered themselves with glory, let's put it that way, during this term, in terms of their general behaviour. It's and I think it is. I mean, like, to an extent, being a councillor is a job that only morons want, because it's a job about posturing. It's all responsibility with no power, if you like. It's like the reverse of that, of the kind of cliche, because you can talk and you can posture and you can say stuff, but your actual power is very, very limited and becoming more limited all the time.
It's all performative. It's all performative. You get a microphone, you're able to make your big grand gestures. I'm going to make my big speech, and I can act the aggrieved party. They're trying to shut me up. I'm trying to tell it like it is. I'm trying to, the levers of power accountable to the taxpayer and all that bullshit because you don't have any power to actually do it. You don't. We've talked about this before. And we've talked about it.
Yeah, I mean, our weak mayor system is it's not just a weak mayor system; it's a weak council system, which encourages posturing nobodies to kind of run for the job. and it also encourages, and I think it also encourages, and people could fairly suggest that this is sour grapes coming from me, and maybe it is, but. I do think there are good candidates who maybe run once, see what the job's actually like, and think, oh, damn that, I'm glad I didn't get that job, and then go and do something else. Because it's like, life's not worth this kind of nonsense for a job that basically has incredibly restricted, genuine influence. And what we're ultimately saying here is councils with more genuine influence would attract better candidates, would produce better results. That we basically have a system that doesn't trust the democratically elected leaders to democratically lead, and that's a problem. Is it going to change anytime soon? I think so, but it should be. I mean, the whole issue of municipal government should be front and center in everything we do because it affects us day to day so much more than anything else does. Well, it looks like we're about halfway through, so why don't we take a quick break and then we'll come back and look at the second item on our docket today. Okay, welcome back. And actually, just before we get going on part 2 of the podcast, I just want to do quick corrections and clarifications from last week. Received an email saying that we got a couple of facts wrong. I mean, yeah, sure, whatever. So in terms of the Burlington's official plan being officially adopted, it isn't officially adopted yet. I believe it has been adopted at the region. It hasn't been it isn't finalized and in force at the moment. Second issue that this listener disputed was the 17-story height of the recently approved building on Lakeshore and Pearl in Burlington. The approval has been for 29 stories. And this listener pointed out that the city actually only defended to 22 stories. They didn't try to defend their own official plan's 17 stories. I don't think that actually makes any difference to the interpretation or what we were saying, which was, again, about the lack of power of cities to control their own destinies and to put the people that they are obliged to house in the places that they believe are most appropriate for them. So happy to correct mistakes when we make them. I don't think it changes anything significant about what we were saying. Okay, so Joel, what's up next?
Maps. Still sticking in Hamilton. This one's I think a little bit more fun and really cool. In the Spectator, there was a map printed in the opinion section where Stop Sprawl Hamilton, Ontario, whom we had on Nancy Hurst from there a few episodes back. Please go into our back episodes and take a listen. It's a great episode. They have spent a lot of time putting together a map of basically vacant land in the downtown Hamilton area, and it's printed in the Spectator on Thursday, November 4th. We'll put a link to the article in our show notes for you to take a look. But it's impressive, to say the least. I'm looking at it right now. It's like just the amount of unused or tenable land that can be repurposed into housing, into commercial use, whatever have you. What do you think, Roland?
Well, I think it very nicely illustrates the point that the Stop Sprawl Ham ONT people have been making, which is that probably in every city in the 905 and in Hamilton probably more than any other, there is a lot of space available for developers to build. housing that would more than house all the people that need to be housed, and not just there's something of a myth about the kind of numbers that cities have to take, or it's not a myth. It's just people always dispute. Well, the city has to take this many, but that's only a lower minimum number. There's no upper limit on that. So, but Hamilton has plenty of space to more than meet the requirements that it has to meet to house people. My goodness, you could fit an awful lot of affordable housing in there if you wanted to, but all those downtown sites, those greyfield sites, those parking lots, those former industrial sites, one of which I pass nearly every day now, that used to be industrial and is currently just empty, is more difficult for developers from their perspective to develop than a greenfield site, which doesn't basically has nothing in their way. It's the greenfield site is the perfect place to develop because it's cheap, it's easy for them, not cheap and easy for the city.
Well, here's the thing. I mean, you look at the website, and it is amazing. Just the amount, it's almost criminal, the fact that how much of it is underdeveloped or just not developed at all. And the city's just kind of running off like, well, we can't do anything downtown. There's absolutely nothing to do. This is, it's very, to me, it's damning. It's kind of one of those things, waste not, want not. You've got all this land downtown. It's like literally, like you're looking at this map, and to me, it's literally, you are seeing the hollowing out, the literal hollowing out of downtown Hamilton. Like there's so much space that could be repurposed or just developed into, as you said, social housing, or just brand new condo towers or triplex, duplex, whatever have you. A little imagination could go a long way here and go a long way to really solving the homeless issue that exists in Hamilton. Not to mention, I know, well, I was just going to say, this is me editorializing big time here. Like my wife is involved in social development field, and the one thing that they're always saying is that there's never enough social housing for people with mental health, developmental needs, that kind of thing. And like I just look at this like, this is criminal that we're going to pass up all these spots to do something to really fill this gaping need. And because it's I don't know, it's easier to tear up some farmland.
And I mean, to be honest, I don't think it's either or. There's nothing about development in Ontario is an either or proposition. It's about both. It's about, we'll develop downtown. Of course you will. There's Hamilton has skyrocketing house prices. There's all kinds of fantastic business reasons to be building in downtown Hamilton right now. Believe me, the developers are not going to do that because they're having a huff about the greenfield sites. No, they want the greenfield sites too. That's all this is about. And it's the nonsense coming from the Ministry of Municipal Affairs about, well, unless we do this, we're going to be passing up jobs and people won't be able to come here and blah, blah, blah. It's just like, no, this is garbage. Your own legislation says Hamilton has to house people. Mm-hmm. There's no ifs, buts, maybes. It has the places. It has the market. I mean, above all, right now to attract developers. It's not an either or. It's a this and this, please. And that's just the beginning and end of really what this provincial government has been around since the minute it got into government.
Well, I just wonder, I just look at this, again, I'm going back to this map, and I look and I say, like, I see such opportunity here, such opportunity to really kind of develop Hamilton into a 21st century city. Like they're talking with the recent LRT debate / fiasco. If they finally put that, the wheels on the ground for that, so to speak, it helped fuel this development and fuel this transformation of the city into, just again, like a 21st century model. I'm looking at think of the better housing construction, not just housing, but you could add in public Wi-Fi. You add in more public space included with that. You could really do. You could really do something special, something really world defining, something that people around the world say, "Hey, what did Hamilton do?" Oh, okay. We should try copy that for our city.
And it's happening to an extent. I mean, there's I can think just in my little corner, there's a great repurposed factory on Dundurn Street. There's now apartments. Really great use of an existing building to add. And Dundurn Street was not the nicest street in the world relatively recently, and now it's kind of it's catching the Lock Street kind of vibe. So that whole neighborhood is being kind of is being transformed. There's also like a newer, more modern building at the kind of Lock and King kind of area that's about 4 or 5 stories, maybe 5-6 stories, which I think works really well in the context of the other things in that neighborhood. So really good stuff. Exactly the kind of stuff that I was always kind of wanting to see in Burlington, which never seemed to come. So it is there, but it's not coming at huge speed yet. And if you look at all those little yellow dots on that map, actually you can see the route of the LRT is one of the areas where there are the most sites that are just empty, and huge big chunks, which are basically parking lots in downtown Hamilton, just waiting for people to do good things with. And there are some pretty big applications in right now for high rises and mid rises and the rest of it, also down by the harbour. And so these things are coming, but what isn't coming is sufficient affordable housing. The ones that I just mentioned, I think they're good developments. They're not affordable though, or not affordable by what most people consider to be the definition of affordable, which is less than market value rather than over market value.
Yeah, I just look at this as it's amazing to tell that the binary argument that's being made of, well, if we need housing, which we do, then we just have to keep building out, expanding onto the greenbelt, when clearly that's not the case. You kind of have to take a top level approach, and you see that there's so many other options here, better use of the land than just paving paradise. What I think I should point out, and this is something that I find amazing, is that the developers have got a strategy core working for them, a PR firm out of Toronto. They are helping to kind of mobilize a pro-development argument for the white belt, so to speak. I want to say this map was created by grassroots activists. To my knowledge, there's no big money put into this. This was done by volunteers using a map and pixels and just saying, "Hey, I noticed this lot here, let's double check." And it was a labor of love, and they put this together. This is really, in my opinion, shot almost sunk that ship for the PR campaign to pave out the white belt, because the entire argument was basically, hey, there's nowhere to build in Hamilton. We have to keep pushing out. This just completely torpedoed that entire argument in one picture.
And that argument is such a pile of horseshit. I can't not swear about it, because the self-same people are arguing in another city the exact opposite in exactly the same situation. And they say, well, we can't go out, so we need to go up. And there's no city in Ontario, there's probably no city in Canada which doesn't have stacks and stacks of underutilized land in its downtown, usually because of ground level parking, which is the cancer on our downtowns for the last 50 years or more. It's waiting there to be developed. And it will be developed because, again, developers aren't idiots. They'll develop everywhere. It's not a matter of if it's coming in this place. It's a matter of they want more. And it's we all agree that we need more housing. The only question we ever have is, what kind of housing? Is it going to be the kind of the stuff that will bring the most profits to developers, which obviously they want to build? And that's fair enough. We understand they're in it for the money. That's fine. Or is it going to be, are we going to control the market in such a way that we get the housing that we need, which is vastly more affordable housing, vastly more housing aimed at young families? And is it going to be placed in the locations which make most sense for a future where, we've got the big conference in Scotland at the moment predicting, catastrophic heat rises and climate change problems over the next 50 years. If they're right, we don't want to be sprawling and building for things that depend on cars, even electric cars.
We need
to use energy.
We need to rethink the way that our cities are growing. The reason why we created this podcast was the 905 is poised at that tipping point where we can either just keep expanding out, or we can start retooling our cities into more livable, sustainable communities than the plan for the 1950s, which was always just, okay, just keep building it out and we'll build another highway to connect you to a shopping mall. We got to throw that plan out the window. And we're going to, kudos to the places like Stop Sprawl Ham ONT for kind of putting their foot in the sand and saying, no, we're not budging on this. We're not going to accept it.
These are changes that have to happen. If you live in North America, even if you live a fairly green and car restricted life, the just facts of how we have built our communities mean you are putting out more carbon dioxide into the environment than the same person in Europe. It's just, and that has to change. It's not sustainable. We can't, as I say, if everybody just replaces their gas cars with an electric car, it's an improvement, but we're still burning huge amounts of energy one way or the other. And a lot of that is still going to come from fossil fuels. We need to have cities that are primarily walkable, and where we can get about in the most efficient and cost-effective ways possible.
I'm going to say let's leave it at that for today. Roland, that seems like be a good note to end the episode on.
Absolutely. Thanks.
Thanks, everyone. Right. We will talk with you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.
That's it for this episode of the 905er. Thank you for listening. As always, you can send us your feedback, thoughts, and concerns or ideas for future episodes to our email, info@905er.ca. We'd love to hear from you. You can help us keep the 905er going by financially supporting us through Patreon as well as PayPal. Visit us at 905er.ca and click on the support tab. As well, links are in the show notes for your convenience. Lastly, you can find us on social media. Search for _905er on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. So long for now. See you next time.
Looking to make the most out of this life and optimize your personal wellness? Then check out the Natural Man Podcast. Join me, host Mike C., as we explore all areas of human wellness, physical, mental, and emotional. Learn strategies to optimize your own well-being and be in the driver's seat of your own health. Remember, your doctor works for you. Learn biohacks, neurohacks, ways to improve sleep, and ways to optimize your body and your mind. Check us out on Apple, Spotify, the Fountain app, and at naturalmanpodcast.com.